When I consider what I saw recently when it comes to Zebec to be an awesome update, arguably I would say yes, even though nothing I say is financial advice. Now, why would I think so? It's because not too long ago, Zebec, they announced how they partnered with Stripe and they have integrated something called Privy. Now, think about this, right? When it comes to Privy, it's part of Stripe, and I find this pretty impressive because sometimes people like to say, oh, no one really cares about Zebec. They're not really doing anything. Well, I think this is pretty impressive considering just how massive something like Stripe is. And also, they mentioned how in phase 2, Zebec will expand within the Stripe network for, some stablecoin stuff and kind of things surrounding that. So I find that pretty interesting when it comes to some Zebec. Stripe, again, it's so massive, and seeing something like Zebec, especially not having the biggest market cap out there when it comes to ZBCN, I mean, it's in the hundreds of millions, but it's not even a billion, And the thing is as well, it doesn't have like the most amount of holders. I mean, sure, it has over 80,000 holders, but it doesn't have like 300,000, 500,000 or something like that. And still is able to do stuff like this. Don't get me wrong. Despite, those metrics that I mentioned before, I'm still a fan of Zebec just purely because of that, right? Because when I see something like Stellar, for instance, I mean, it's already so massive. So I like seeing something like this. But then originally, I wouldn't really expect a project of this size to kind of be able to do stuff like this. So I find this pretty impressive. So sometimes when people like to tell me, oh, it doesn't matter that Circle is a backer when it comes to Zebec, even though Circle is the creator of USDC, sometimes you like to say, oh, it doesn't matter that Swan Ventures is a backer when it comes to Zebec as well. They like to say that, right? But I think at moments like this, sometimes they could truly shine because maybe when they were making that partnership, in this case, could they have looked at maybe, right? In the case of Privy, which is allegedly now part of Stripe, but I'm saying, did they probably take a look at who are the backers when it comes to Zebec? Maybe. Who knows? But it wouldn't necessarily surprise me. Sometimes stuff like that, I think, gives a little bit of credibility in some instances. Not to say in every single instance, but I'm saying hypothetically, I do kind of feel that way. Now, people like to say, okay, still even despite all this, why is ZBCN still approximately 34 times lower than 10 cents? Well, first of all, altcoins are not doing the best. Bitcoin is still around that 90,000 range, and it's not really doing much in the grand scheme of things. But in my perspective, I saw the sentiment when it comes to ZBCN not too long ago. Like, let's just say 3 months ago. And did this exist back then when it comes to what they just recently did when it comes to Privy and the aspects of Stripe? No, right? And it was still able to do pretty okay. Now, granted, though, it still had a pretty big pullback 3 months ago when compared to the market cap in which it had quite a while back ago at around 500 million. But I'm just saying, I don't view it as necessarily such a bad thing in my perspective, considering how ZBCN was still able to do that not too long ago. And then seeing stuff like this, what could happen if maybe there is a change in sentiment when it comes to altcoins? What could happen if there was maybe an altcoin season? Could this type of stuff be looked into, or should I say looked back into right at that moment in time? That wouldn't necessarily surprise me either. This is why I'm still a fan of Zebec, because they still keep doing things. I mean, other projects out there, they just kind of like gave up the way you take a look at it. But when I see something like this, I'm pretty impressed. That's just my perspective. Because also, I would imagine, right, that partnering with something of that caliber, again, something like Privy, which is a part of Stripe, I feel like not every single project could do that. And the thing is, even though when it comes to the global trade and finance space within this market, it's pretty tight-knit, like there's not too many popular projects within this space. But then at the same time, Zebec being able to do this while we see some other competitors like Onyx still work on their layer 1 blockchain, which don't get me wrong, I'm still a fan of Onyx. But then the thing is, they launched a testnet of their layer 1 blockchain, and then they're still waiting for the mainnet in Q1 of next year, which I'm still a fan of, by the way, but we have seen kind of a shift in terms of what Zebec is doing. It feels like they're updating more. And Onyx, granted, they're still working behind the scenes, I would presume, but then at the same time, it seems like there's just more things coming out when it comes to Zebec. The reason why I even want to compare this to something like Onyx was because, or should I say is because, right? When I take a look back not too long ago when altcoins did have a better sentiment than right now, we saw XCN, or should I say Onyx, that market cap right there was around $1 billion. But then we saw ZBCN not too long ago reach kind of like a pretty good point, and it was around that 500 million range. So XCN historically actually did more as of late in the past year or so, I would say. But then at the same time, what has held up a little bit better in my perspective? I think ZBCN, and arguably as of right now, what seems to be updating more. Arguably, I would say it's Zebec, because quite a while back ago, when it comes to the space of global trade and finance, these type of projects within this space, like Zebec was oftentimes compared to Onyx. When XCN initially had that rally, everyone was saying, oh, why believe in Zebec? Take a look at what XCN is doing and all this type of stuff. Then, of course, XCN had a pullback, and then ZBCN had its kind of rally. And then, granted, now they both have a pullback, but we take a look at just the progression overall. Onyx, despite achieving a little bit more of a kind of popular sentiment earlier on when compared to Zebec, at least in the past a year and a half, we've still seen Zebec, despite that timeline and despite the kind of first mover advantage in terms of popularity that we saw when it comes to Onyx for the past year and a half, ZBCN has been kind of catching up a little bit despite all that. So I find that pretty impressive. And what I like about it as well is that, sure, I mean, when it comes to Zebec, I don't necessarily have to believe in it, but I'm doing so voluntarily. I'm doing so personally just because I like the team. I like what they're trying to do. And also, I like where the project seems to be heading in terms of partnerships, even though I'm not telling anyone to do anything. I mean, a week ago, if I mentioned something like Stripe and Zebec, a lot of people would have probably told me, oh, how's that possible? Take a look at ZBCN is having a pullback. Well, here's the thing. Sometimes when a project wants to partner up with something, I don't think necessarily the price is the main criteria. I think sometimes they take a look at the fundamentals, right? Because if, let's say, they want to partner with something like Privy, which is again part of Stripe, are they going to be overly concerned over the pullback that ZBCN is having along with a bunch of other altcoins if the fundamentals are actually pretty good? I don't think that would be such a major factor, arguably in some cases. That's just, again, my perspective. It's a little bit different in the retail side of things, but then in the enterprise side of things, it could be a little bit different. And I think sometimes they do focus on the fundamentals because despite what's ever going on with the altcoin space and all this, Zebec seems to be kind of heading the fundamentals in a certain direction. The thing is, sometimes a project could be doing pretty good fundamentally, but because there's like a downturn when it comes to the altcoin space, it could not be looking that good in terms of the charts. But in terms of the fundamentals, it could be a different case. 10 cents, considering current circulating supply, at that point, market cap would be around 7.7 billion. But keep in mind, before they updated the circulating supply in some places, right? Like before, it would need a market cap of around 9.7 billion, around 9.5 billion, around that range. But then because the circulating supply was updated, now the market cap needed is around 7.7 billion. Which, I'm not going to complain about. That's like around a 20% decrease. So if something to reach 10 cents hypothetically would need less of a market cap than before, theoretically, would I be complaining? Nah, I don't think so, actually. But yeah, that's just my point of view. I mean, again, 10 cents is still around, like, very far away, I would say. I mean, currently, again, we are still over 30 times lower than that. But at least the market cap wouldn't need to be as massive as before the circulating supply was recently updated. So yeah, but yeah, I just wanted to make this updated video real quick and just talk about this recent partnership, which I would find to be pretty awesome to me. However, yeah, that's pretty much about it. I want to say thank you for watching. I hope you'll have a nice day. It's Believe the Captain, and I'll be sure to make more updated videos. I'm out. Peace. Bye.